we're all seeking certainty right now, and I think to some extent we're seeking normalcy. Now, the NHL is no exception to this. So there's a report out there from Andy Strickland that he's heard from a prominent agent that players were told on a phone call that the salary cap will stay flat. But then he qualified it by saying there have been numerous scenarios including this. Well, wait a minute. Is it staying flat or it's not? And for the NHL, I have to say, if the NHL is coming out and going, well, no, we're going to leave it the way it is. We're going to leave it all flat. You're really not thinking ahead then. The salary cap isn't just about, your certainty for next year. It's about the financial state of the league. The financial state of the league right now is in trouble because every single sport worldwide, every league right now is losing money. As long as we're not playing games, on some level, they're losing money. Now, for leagues that lose money, they can make money when they're not on the ice and on the field and whatever else you may have. I remember during the lockout in 04-05, famously there were teams that said, we make more money if we don't play hockey this year than we make if we do. So, whether or not this cap goes up or stays the same, if it stays the same, if you have $81.5 million for next year's cap, and you've lost, say, $350 million in revenues this year, and you're going to lose money next season as well, I just, that creates this financial hole. And it's great for your Torontos. Now, here's the thing. For fans in Toronto and New York to go, that's fine. It's fine with us because we can survive. Yeah, no. The way that the NHL works is that the rich give to the poor. So the more money that your Floridas and your Arizonas are losing, the more money that's going to be getting paid by fans in Toronto, New York, Boston, Chicago to help prop those teams up. We've had this discussion for years. We've had this discussion for years about how the rich pay for the poor and they make it so everybody has the same amount of money for cap and you help out other teams, which is great. It worked back in the late 90s to make sure that teams didn't leave Canada after we'd lost Quebec and Winnipeg, that we didn't lose Calgary, potentially Vancouver and Edmonton. And now here we are. We're at 2020. There's this huge crisis that's going on all around us. And it just feels to me like if they leave the cap flat and they don't try to get creative, it's a business as usual kind of approach, and I see huge pitfalls in that. They missed the last month of the season and they missed the playoffs, and playoffs are huge for revenues. So and we still don't know what's going to happen next season as well. I think you're better off to sit down and negotiate this through. But anyways, I wanted to get that out of the way first, even though it's at the bottom. And yes, if it stays flat, you're going to have compliance buyouts because you got unrestricted free agents and restricted free agents that need to get paid. And now your cap's going to be a lot below where you said it was going to be. And yeah, so we'll see what happens because honestly, if they try to keep it the same, and again, it's just Andy Strickland. I've been looking at other sources and I haven't seen anything from anybody else. But as long as there's somebody reporting it who's got that blue check mark on Twitter, it's going to be a talking point. So it's on the board. We'll see what the NHL does. I don't have any inside sources telling me what may or may not happen with the cap because I don't think they've decided. We still don't know what's going to happen to the rest of the season and the playoffs. So this to me is highly speculative. Now, Marco Scandella signs for $3.275 million with the St. Louis Blues yesterday, 4-year deal, and that ends the Alex Pietrangelo stage of the St. Louis Blues. I can't see how you keep him. They also signed MacEachern today for 2 years at $1.8 million. While I'm writing this up, MacEachern signs 2-year, $1.8 million extension. So the Blues are now at $79.4 million spent next year. If the cap's flat, that's $81.5 million. I don't think Pietrangelo, as much as he may love St. Louis, is going to sign for $2 million. I also don't think he's going to sign for $7 million, which means you'd have to free up $5 million somewhere in order to keep him. I don't see how Pietrangelo stays. I just don't see it. Scandella at 3.275 that seems high. I'm really surprised at Scandella at 3.275. We'll see, but just that feels high to me. So I did see Blues fans being really happy with that deal, and I'm thinking, I don't know, we'll see, right? It feels like that would be a downgrade on the blue line, if they lose Pietrangelo, and it feels like that blue line's been changed. They won the cup last year with that blue line, and now it's been changed a couple of times. We'll see, because Edmondson leaves, and now it looks like Petrangelo's probably on his way out. We'll see what they do. Maybe Doug Armstrong's got something up his sleeve. I don't know, but it's going to be a challenge to keep Pietrangelo at all. I think that's done. The Jets today finally terminated Dustin Byfuglien's contract. It was a mutual agreement between they and the player. Now, part of, I think, what's delayed this is they didn't want to just straight out terminate his contract and have him take them to court and sue them and all this. They wanted to make sure that it was something that was agreed upon between the player and the team. So it's done. Allow the speculation to begin that we're going to see Dustin Byfuglien playing for another team. I think his career's over. I don't think he's coming back. From reports that I heard, it didn't sound like he really wanted to come back. It didn't sound like he was interested in playing anymore. That he was kind of done with it. So yeah, in all likelihood, Dustin Byfuglien's probably completed his NHL career unceremoniously in a fashion we didn't see coming. Like a year ago today, we would have been talking about, Byfuglien, he's a good anchor on that blue line, so yeah, Trouba's probably going to go, but they still got Byfuglien, and now they don't have Byfuglien. They've got Morrissey, though, and Pionk turned out to be a pretty good consolation prize for losing out on Trouba. So that trade worked out pretty well for Winnipeg. And we'll see what they do with the cap money that they save on Byfuglien. Now, the league is meeting with, and I know right now they're talking about Canada's government, and they've met over the phone. Obviously, it'll probably be a meeting over the phone as well with Canada's governments. They're trying, and then what I like about this is that all of sports commissioners in the states talking together on the phone and trying to come up with some sort of a plan, a way forward to bring sports back in this era. And so the discussion with Canada is going to be had on a limited basis, because the NFL's not in Canada. And so with no NFL in Canada, you don't have to have Goodell on the phone. Major League Baseball, I guess, with just the Blue Jays, and I guess with the Raptors, you can have an NBA. But you don't need to have a big meeting. It can just be Bettman talking things over and trying to figure out how you have a return to sports. So there is that conversation going on, and I know people don't like it. I know there's a lot of people who are like, I don't want to hear about that. We're going through all this terrible stuff right now. And we're also seeing that with the steps that we've taken, the numbers have been getting better. They've been getting less scary. So as horrible as things have looked, and they're still scary in places, the numbers seem to get better. Now, I agree that if we just go, all right, and we all go back to life the way it was, that then it becomes absolutely horrible immediately, because that's how this thing works, that it doubles every, I think it's 2 to 3 days, you would double your numbers. So you can't have that. But sports, and they're talking about having, a system where basically players are completely insulated from everybody, and that's going to be hard. That would be very hard for players that have a family, where they, during regular situation, they would see them when they're at home. They would see them, points during the year, and this would be you're not going to see your family during the season at all, because they will be completely sequestered, and staff will be completely sequestered. Anybody they will basically only interact with one another in person. That would be it. And they are trying to come up with a situation, because I've seen people say, well, all it takes is one person getting it. Oh, leagues know. So they would make sure that if you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're a trainer, if you're involved, you meet with absolutely nobody outside of your sphere. And they will do everything they can to make sure it happens, and they're going to talk to governments about it. Obviously, for players who are in European countries, it's not possible right now, but they're not talking about that return being, tomorrow either, or May 1st. The ban, for instance, in Calgary, so related to this, goes through June 30th. So there won't be a single Flames game at first. The earliest you could have one would be July 1st. But of course, where these games would be played and how is part of the ongoing conversation. Tree Living feels that fans are most likely not going to be present. And this is all sports. Basically, you won't have fans present until we have things under control. But that could take a very, very, very long time. And we would see a situation where, entire leagues could go under. So, teams and leagues are trying to figure out a way to make sure that doesn't happen while maintaining public safety. So again, that's where the sequestering and keeping everybody locked away from everybody else comes in. Now, the one thing he mentioned too is that the idea of face shields, and I thought, wow. So Tree Living watches my video. Thanks, Brad. Nice to know you're a subscriber. But all kidding aside, he talks about, would players be wearing masks and face coverings on the ice again, in the interest of public safety, and potentially because they may have to. We may be in that situation where they would have to. And what are the logistics of this? And so this is something that the NHL is trying to work through. General managers are working through, and they're trying to approach their business like the Blues are approaching it. Like, okay, well, we're going to come up with next year's budget and figure things out, and when we come back, and we'll figure that part out. But we can get the budget done for next year. And if the cap is going to stay flat, then I would expect more long-term extensions to start coming out. These contracts by St. Louis does give some credence to the idea that at least general managers have been given a guideline as to where the cap's going to be next year. Scandella is the first big number that I've seen in terms of contract extension. Yeah, Blay got $1.5 million a year. That's not huge money. Scandella kind of is. That's $13 million over 4 years. So we will see what happens with this, because also the New Hampshire governor admitted that he's discussed neutral site games with the NHL. So this is part of that, having it in a central location, having it somewhere that maybe you're not dealing with the same public outbreaks and all of this, and trying to figure this out. And that can be playing a really, really advanced game of whack-a-mole is basically what this is. Because in one spot, and then in another, and then in another. And for an example, I know people that work at Cargill in Alberta. So, I know people that are going through this right now, and there's a lot of debate about Cargill in Alberta, which is why, my wife went to the store and bought a lot of meat products a few days ago. Because when I heard about Cargill in Alberta, which supplies 40% of beef, I believe it is, and could be pork as well. Pretty sure it's beef. I'm pretty sure on 40% of Western Canada's beef. And I was like, yeah, the price is going to go through the roof if that plant gets closed down due to this. So I told her to go out and buy some. And that's the thing. We don't know where the next, and that's caused High River now to be in some distress. And it's just one person goes into a plant, then you have 38, and then it goes from there. And I understand. And then there's the business aspect too. So you have a union saying we need to close this down, and you have the bosses going, well, we'd rather not lose all our money, so we're not going to close. Which, yeah, I've worked in plants like that. That makes some sense to me. And so it's that whole whack-a-mole where it's in one spot this week, and we talk about, and then the next week. So this is where that keeping everybody in a bubble that's in the league. So wherever it is or it isn't, all the players are as insulated as possible. And that includes even like the Zamboni drivers. It's going to be interesting. Andrei Markov yesterday announced his retirement. 990 games played, 119 goals, 453 assists, 572 points. It's almost criminal that he didn't play 1,000 games in the NHL, isn't it? He should have had that 1,000th game as a member of the Montreal Canadiens. I remember before the 3 years he spent in the KHL, I was really surprised that he didn't end up staying in Montreal, that Montreal didn't keep him around. And good offensive defenseman, pretty darn solid offensive defenseman throughout his career. And it's a shame that he didn't play the full 1,000 games. He didn't quite get there. But there will be a career video at some point, Andrei Markov. I have no doubt in my mind, especially if it's a year and a half before there's a next hockey game. I'll have time, right? So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. There's a lot of uncertainty, but it feels like there's some discussions of things maybe getting a little bit better. And again, it's going to be controlled. It's going to be slow. It is going to be a slow, controlled thing. But we can do this. We can do this together. I'm very proud of the numbers I've been seeing, and very proud of seeing things starting to get a little bit better. And again, you don't want to overreact when the numbers get better, but you're allowed to be a little bit optimistic too. I've been optimistic the whole way through. My optimism continues. It is not going to go away. So for people who don't like my optimism, I'm not going to apologize for that. I may be Canadian, but I will not apologize for that. My list of apologies does have its limits. Thank you guys so much, though, for everything, for continuing to watch and for supporting the channel throughout all this. It means a lot to me. So when the day comes that things get relaxed and we can start doing meetups and stuff again, I am all for that. And once we're seeing a situation where the economy's better and I can start doing all the traveling stuff. I am really anxious for that. I think it's going to be absolutely great because there are definitely things I look back on over the last couple of years and I think, I really took those moments for granted. And even though I was doing my best to really, enjoy and savor the moments, there are moments along the way that I think I didn't really savor that when I could have. And so once the day comes that, we come out of all of this, I am not taking that for granted. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for everything. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. We'll see what they do. It's going to be an interesting next 18, 24 months, 3, 4 years, 5, 6, 7, 10, 10 years, decade. And interesting next decade. We'll see how things go. Thank you guys so much for everything. I will talk to you again soon. And remember, stay home when you can. Stay safe as much as possible. This means avoiding the whole handshake thing. I won't be going back to that myself. And hey, thank you guys for just sticking with it. It means a ton. I'll talk to you again soon.